The small town of Willowbrook had that gentle, comforting feeling that only small towns seem to have. Streets were lined with oak trees that stretched their branches like arms trying to hug the sky, and houses with white picket fences and colorful flower beds gave the place a storybook charm. People knew each other by name, and everyone looked forward to the yearly community events that brought the town together. One of the most talked about events each year was the talent show. It wasn't a huge fancy production. It was held in the old town hall, a warm, slightly worn building with creaky wooden floors and faded red curtains on the stage. Despite its simplicity, or maybe because of it, the talent show was the heart of Willowbrook. People came not just to watch but to celebrate each other. This year, excitement was in the air. Posters had been put up around town and families were buzzing with anticipation. Kids were practicing dance routines in their living rooms. Teenagers were nervously rehearsing magic tricks, and adults were dusting off forgotten instruments from attics. In the midst of all this energy, an old woman named Eleanor sat quietly in her cozy living room. At 82, Eleanor had lived her whole life in Willowbrook. She knew everyone and everyone knew her, though most only saw her in passing, waving from her porch or buying vegetables at the market. She wasn't the kind of person who sought attention. She liked her quiet mornings, her knitting, and her little garden full of tulips and daffodils. But she also had a spark, a light that came through in her sharp wit and her quick smile. People sometimes underestimated her because of her age, assuming she was too old for much excitement or fun. Eleanor had been sitting in her armchair that morning, sipping her tea, when a knock came at the door. She opened it to find a group of teenagers from the neighborhood, the kind who liked to joke around and stir up laughter wherever they went. They stood there, wide-eyed with mischief, and one of them, the boldest, grinned at her. "Hey, Eleanor," he said, nudging the others. "The talent show's coming up. You should totally enter." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. She had heard the rumors about the talent show and had even seen the posters, but she never thought about participating. She didn't feel the need to perform for anyone. "Me enter?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. The teenagers laughed, exchanging looks like they were sharing a secret. "Yeah, you've got to sing," one of them said. "Come on, it would be hilarious." Eleanor tilted her head, trying to hide her amusement. She could see it in their eyes. They were expecting her to say no, expecting her to play along with their joke. But something inside her stirred. Memories she hadn't thought about in years began to surface. When she was younger, she had sung. Not professionally, not for a crowd of thousands, but in local choirs, at church gatherings, and at small-town parties. Her voice had carried warmth and joy, and for a few brief moments people had stopped and listened. She had forgotten the feeling over the years, but the memory came back vividly now, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. Still, she laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're joking, right?" she asked, more to herself than to them. The teenagers nudged each other, snickering, clearly thrilled by the idea that she might actually say yes. "We're serious," one of them exclaimed. "It would be epic." Eleanor leaned on her cane, thinking. She wasn't sure if it was a good idea, and she definitely wasn't sure if she wanted to be the subject of the town's laughter, but there was a spark of curiosity in her heart, a little challenge that whispered, "Why not?" She looked at the group of eager faces and smiled, her eyes twinkling. "All right," she said quietly, "maybe I'll think about it." The teenagers cheered, their excitement contagious. They left with promises of reminding her every day until she agreed to participate, and Eleanor closed the door with a quiet chuckle. She sat back in her armchair, staring into her tea as her mind wandered back to those days when she used to sing. She remembered the nervous thrill before performing, the way her heart would race, and the joy that came when people smiled and clapped. She hadn't felt that in decades. Days passed, and the chatter in Willowbrook about the talent show grew louder. Posters advertised the event, and the town hall started filling with participants rehearsing for their turn on stage. Eleanor watched from her window as children practiced tap dancing on the sidewalk. Teenagers juggled and performed magic tricks in the park, and adults played musical instruments they hadn't touched in years. The excitement was infectious, and Eleanor found herself humming along to tunes she remembered from long ago. One afternoon, she decided to revisit the small dusty piano tucked away in the corner of her living room. It hadn't been played in years, and a fine layer of dust covered its keys. She brushed it off and pressed a key tentatively. The note rang out, slightly off but still familiar. She sat down, her fingers trembling as they remembered the old melodies. For the first time in a long while, Eleanor felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. The music stirred memories and emotions, and a smile spread across her face. She realized that perhaps this could be more than a joke. Perhaps it was a chance to feel that joy again, even if only for a few minutes. As the day of the talent show approached, Eleanor's neighbors and friends continued to encourage her, some knowing her talent and some simply enjoying the idea of seeing the usually reserved woman take the stage. The town hall buzzed with preparation, the sound of tuning instruments and nervous laughter filling the air. Eleanor practiced quietly, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each passing day. She chose a song that had always held a special place in her heart, one that reminded her of love, life, and the beauty in small moments. It wasn't flashy or modern, but it was heartfelt, and she poured every ounce of feeling into it. On the evening of the talent show, the hall was packed. Families, friends, and neighbors filled the seats, chatting excitedly and waiting for the performances to begin. The red curtains on the stage were drawn, hiding the performers backstage. Eleanor stood quietly behind the curtains, her heart pounding but her mind clear. She wasn't thinking about the laughter of the teenagers or the curious glances of the audience. She was thinking about the music, about the notes she would sing, and about the joy she felt when her voice had been heard long ago. The host called out names of performers, and one by one people came and went, showcasing dances, magic tricks, and musical talents. The audience applauded politely, some with enthusiasm, some with mild amusement. And then came the moment the teenagers had dared her for. The host, with a playful grin, announced, "And now, as a surprise entry, please welcome Eleanor." A ripple of laughter and whispers passed through the audience. People weren't expecting much. Eleanor stepped forward, leaning slightly on her cane but standing tall. She gave a small nod to the audience, her eyes twinkling with quiet confidence. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sensation of anticipation, and prepared to sing. Little did anyone know, this moment would not just be a performance. It would be a memory in the making, a reminder that age could not diminish talent, passion, or courage. And in that quiet, unassuming moment, Eleanor was ready to shine. After stepping back into her quiet home that evening, Eleanor felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She had agreed to perform even if it had been partly in jest. Her mind raced with memories of the past and questions about whether she could still sing as she once had. Sitting down with her knitting, she tried to calm herself, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the piano in the corner and the song she had always loved. The next morning, Eleanor went to the piano again. She sat down, ran her fingers gently over the keys, and listened to the notes she remembered from decades ago. They were slightly stiff, but her fingers quickly remembered where to go. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to drift into the music, imagining herself on a stage with lights shining down and an audience waiting to hear her. She remembered the small thrill she used to feel, the same one she had felt when she sang at gatherings and local events many years ago. She smiled to herself, realizing that despite the many years that had passed, the feeling had never really left her. As days went by, Eleanor practiced every morning. Her neighbors noticed her humming softly while tending to her garden or walking down the street with her cane. Some whispered among themselves about her sudden decision to join the talent show. Many were surprised, thinking that at her age she would rather stay home than step onto a stage. A few of the teenagers who had dared her came by occasionally to cheer her on, laughing and joking but also giving her small bits of encouragement. They would clap and say, "That sounded amazing," even though Eleanor knew she still had a lot of work to do. One afternoon, Eleanor decided to invite a neighbor who had once sung in a choir with her to listen. The neighbor, a kind woman who lived just a few houses down, sat quietly as Eleanor performed. After Eleanor finished, the woman's eyes glistened. "You haven't lost a thing," she said softly. "Your voice is still beautiful, and you have a way of making people feel every note." Eleanor felt a surge of confidence. She realized that even if the audience laughed or underestimated her, she had a gift that still mattered. The encouragement filled her with determination to give her best performance. In the evenings, Eleanor would sit by her window and watch the preparations for the talent show in the town hall. She saw people practicing their acts, running through dances, tuning instruments, and rehearsing lines. There was a mixture of excitement and nervousness in the air, a feeling that made her heart race with anticipation. For the first time in years, she felt connected to something bigger than her home and garden. She felt part of the town's heartbeat, a rhythm that made her feel young again. Her preparation was not only about practicing the song. She also thought about her presence on stage. She remembered how important it was to appear confident, to smile, and to make the audience feel welcome. She practiced walking to the piano, sitting down gracefully and adjusting the microphone. She even practiced speaking a few words before starting the song, though she kept it simple. Eleanor wanted to make sure that her performance was not just about singing, but about connecting with the people watching. As the talent show approached, Eleanor noticed that her neighbors and friends had started to take more interest in her decision to perform. They offered her small tips like keeping a handkerchief nearby in case she got nervous or drinking warm tea before going on stage to keep her throat clear. Eleanor appreciated their concern and quietly followed their advice. Each day she felt her confidence grow, though a small part of her still worried about how the audience would react. Eleanor also took time to reflect on why she was performing. It was not about proving anything to the teenagers who had dared her, nor was it about winning applause or recognition. It was about reclaiming a part of herself that had lain dormant for too long. She wanted to feel the joy of singing again, to let her voice tell a story that had been waiting for decades to be shared. With every practice session, she felt stronger and more certain that she could touch the hearts of those who listened. One evening, she went to bed with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. She dreamt of the stage, the lights, and the audience. In her dream, she sang effortlessly, and people smiled, clapped, and cheered. When she woke, the dream lingered in her mind, leaving her with a quiet excitement that made her heart race and her hands tremble with anticipation. She knew that the day of the talent show would bring challenges, but she also knew she was ready to face them. The morning of the talent show arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers through the streets of Willowbrook. Eleanor spent the morning preparing carefully. She wore her favorite dress, a soft pastel color that made her feel comfortable and confident. She brushed her hair and put on a simple touch of makeup, just enough to feel presentable without drawing too much attention. She wanted her focus to remain on her voice and her performance. As she walked to the town hall, she felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. The streets were alive with people heading to the event. Children laughed as they ran ahead, families chatted about who would win, and some neighbors waved at Eleanor, wishing her luck. She smiled and nodded, feeling warmth in her chest. The community that had always been around her suddenly felt even closer, as if their presence gave her strength. Backstage at the town hall, performers were getting ready. Some were practicing last-minute steps, tuning instruments, or checking costumes. Eleanor quietly found a corner and began warming up her voice. She sang a few notes softly, just enough to feel the familiar connection with the music. A few of the teenagers from her neighborhood peeked behind the curtain, grinning. "You've got this," one whispered. Eleanor smiled at them but kept her focus on her breathing and the song she would sing. The host called the next act, and Eleanor could hear the applause as performers went on stage. The sounds of the audience, clapping, laughter, and cheers filled the room and made her heart pound. She reminded herself to stay calm and to remember the joy that had brought her here in the first place. It wasn't about judgment or criticism. It was about sharing a piece of herself through the music. As the moments ticked by, Eleanor felt a sense of readiness she hadn't felt in years. She realized that no matter what happened, she was proud of herself for embracing the challenge. She had taken the first step, faced her doubts, and prepared herself with care and dedication. She knew that stepping onto that stage would be a personal triumph, a way to honor the past and celebrate the present. The anticipation became a gentle hum of excitement in her chest, replacing the nervous fluttering that had once threatened to overwhelm her. Finally, the host announced the next performer. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sensation of butterflies in her stomach. She leaned on her cane and began walking toward the stage. The wooden floor felt solid beneath her feet, and the red curtain seemed to welcome her with a quiet, supportive embrace. She approached the microphone, positioned herself in front of the piano, and adjusted the seat. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took another deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the memories and the music to wash over her. When she opened her eyes, she saw the audience waiting. She noticed the curious glances, the whispers, and even the laughter she expected. But instead of fear, she felt a calm determination. She remembered the mornings of practice, the support of her neighbors, and the memories of a younger self who had sung with passion. Eleanor knew that the voice she had nurtured for so many years was ready to speak again. The moment had arrived, and she was prepared to embrace it fully, ready to sing from her heart and let the music tell her story. Eleanor took one last deep breath before lifting her eyes to the audience. She could see the rows of faces waiting, the soft lighting of the stage casting gentle shadows. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd as they whispered about the unlikely performer stepping into the spotlight. She felt a twinge of nervousness, but it was tempered by a steady resolve. This was her moment, and she intended to embrace it. She adjusted the microphone and placed her hands on the piano keys. The familiar feel of the instrument beneath her fingers gave her comfort. Eleanor's voice had been quiet in the practice room, but here, surrounded by the presence of the audience, it needed to carry. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension melt, and pressed the first key. The note sounded clear and warm, and she felt a spark of confidence ignite within her. As the first notes of her song filled the auditorium, Eleanor could see the initial smiles of amusement on the faces of some audience members begin to fade. Their curiosity shifted into something more attentive. She closed her eyes, letting the memories of the music guide her. The words flowed naturally, each one carrying emotion and the quiet wisdom of years. Her voice, though not young anymore, was rich and expressive, telling stories of love, loss, joy, and resilience. She felt herself transported back to her youth, performing for small gatherings, feeling the gentle connection between her music and those who listened. With each note, the room grew quieter. People leaned forward in their seats, drawn in by the sincerity of her performance. Eleanor had always believed that music was not just about technique, but about the way it could touch hearts. She sang with a careful balance of control and feeling, letting the notes rise and fall with the natural rhythm of emotion. The laughter and whispers from earlier were replaced by a collective silence, a shared experience between performer and audience that transcended age and expectation. Her hands moved across the piano keys with ease, remembering each chord and melody that had been a part of her life for so long. Eleanor's eyes remained closed for most of the performance, but when she opened them, she noticed the expressions of surprise and admiration on the faces in the front rows. Some people had stopped clapping politely, instead choosing to listen intently, caught in the beauty of the moment. A few had tears in their eyes, touched by the depth of feeling in her voice. It was not just a song anymore. It was a story of a life well lived, shared through music. As she reached the middle of the song, Eleanor felt a surge of energy. She had worried about her voice, her memory of the song, and the reaction of the audience, but those fears had melted away. She realized that what mattered most was the honesty of her performance. Each note was a piece of herself, a reflection of decades of experience, laughter, sorrow, and love. She felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling that she had not experienced in years, the pure joy of expressing herself freely. The audience responded without hesitation. Some leaned forward, captivated, while others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Eleanor noticed even the teenagers who had dared her to perform were silent, their playful smiles replaced by awe. She felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing their reaction. The joke had shifted unexpectedly. She was no longer the subject of amusement, but the center of admiration and respect. The final verse of the song approached, and Eleanor's voice grew stronger, more confident. She emphasized the words with care, letting the emotion resonate in each phrase. The piano accompaniment supported her voice, creating a harmony that filled the room. Eleanor had practiced many times, but now, in the presence of a real audience, her performance felt alive, dynamic, and spontaneous. She allowed herself to feel every note, every pause, and every breath, knowing that this moment would be remembered not just for her, but for those listening. When she hit the last note, there was a brief pause. The audience sat in silence, almost unwilling to break the spell that had been created. Eleanor held the note, letting it linger, savoring the connection she felt with the people around her. Then slowly the applause began. It started softly, a few claps from the front rows, and then grew louder, more enthusiastic. Eleanor looked up and saw people on their feet clapping, cheering, and smiling. Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and joy. The laughter and doubt that had greeted her earlier had been replaced by admiration and genuine appreciation. She allowed herself a small, humble smile, nodding to the audience as she let the final chord resonate. The energy in the room was electric, the kind that comes from a shared experience so powerful that it lingers long after the performance ends. Eleanor felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced her fears, embraced her talent, and touched the hearts of everyone present. The moment was more than she had imagined, more than she could have hoped for. It was a testament to the idea that age could not diminish spirit, courage, or skill. The teenagers who had dared her to sing were now standing, clapping loudly, their eyes wide with amazement. Their laughter and jokes had been replaced with admiration. Eleanor felt a quiet pride in showing them that talent and passion were not limited by age or circumstance. The audience continued to cheer, some waving their hands, some calling out words of praise. Eleanor stood slowly, feeling the warmth and acceptance from everyone in the room. She bowed gently, acknowledging the connection she had created with the audience. Backstage, people who had been preparing for their own performances whispered about what they had just witnessed. Eleanor had not only impressed the audience, but she had also inspired her fellow performers. She felt a sense of camaraderie and support that was both unexpected and deeply gratifying. The quiet confidence she had nurtured over the past weeks had blossomed into a public affirmation of her abilities and her resilience. As Eleanor walked off the stage, she felt a lightness in her step. The applause still echoed in her ears, and she realized that the performance had changed something within her. She had reclaimed a part of herself that had been dormant for years, rediscovering the joy and power of her voice. The experience had reminded her that talent, courage, and passion do not fade with time. They only wait for the right moment to shine again. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Eleanor received congratulations from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had been touched by her performance. People smiled warmly, shared kind words, and expressed their admiration. The experience was humbling and uplifting at the same time. Eleanor felt deeply connected to her community, grateful for the chance to share her music and for the acceptance and love she had received. Later that night, Eleanor sat in her favorite chair at home, reflecting on the day. She thought about the nervousness, the preparation, and the moments on stage when everything aligned perfectly. She realized that the true reward was not just the applause or recognition, but the feeling of reconnecting with a part of herself that had been waiting patiently for her to listen. The music had given her more than an audience. It had given her a sense of purpose, joy, and fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in years. Eleanor's performance became a story that the town would remember for a long time. People talked about the unlikely singer who had taken the stage with grace, confidence, and heart. Her journey to the piano, the notes she played, and the emotions she shared became an inspiration to others, proving that courage and talent could shine at any age. Eleanor herself felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had not only honored her past but had created a moment that would be cherished by everyone who had witnessed it. That night, as she drifted into sleep, she felt a deep peace, a certainty that she had embraced her gift fully and had allowed it to touch the lives of those around her. The next morning, Eleanor woke up to a quiet house, but it felt different than usual. There was a gentle energy lingering in the air, a sense that something extraordinary had happened the night before. The memory of the applause, the standing ovation, and the smiles of the audience filled her heart with warmth. She sipped her morning tea slowly, letting herself savor the feeling of accomplishment and joy that came from her performance. As she stepped outside, she noticed that the streets of Willowbrook carried a different buzz. Neighbors waved and greeted her with enthusiastic smiles. Some stopped to shake her hand, others offered congratulations or simply nodded with respect. The town was still talking about the talent show, and Eleanor realized that her performance had become a story that everyone wanted to share. People she had never spoken to before approached her with kind words, reminding her that the impact of one courageous act could ripple far beyond a single moment. At the local market, Eleanor was met with cheerful greetings. Shopkeepers complimented her voice and the emotion she had conveyed. Friends and neighbors lingered to chat about the event, recounting their favorite parts and expressing their amazement. The sense of community that had always existed in Willowbrook felt stronger, more connected, and Eleanor felt proud to be a part of it. She realized that her decision to perform had not only touched her life, but had also inspired those around her. Eleanor's mailbox was filled with small notes and letters from townspeople. Some thanked her for the inspiration. Others shared personal stories about how her performance had reminded them of forgotten dreams. A few children had drawn pictures, inspired by her song, and some teenagers wrote heartfelt messages expressing admiration for her courage. Eleanor read each note carefully, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The words reminded her that a single act of bravery and talent could resonate far beyond the stage, influencing hearts and minds in ways she had never imagined. Word of Eleanor's performance spread beyond Willowbrook. People in nearby towns heard about the extraordinary woman who had captivated a small audience with her voice and emotion. While she had not sought attention or fame, the recognition brought her a quiet pride. She had achieved something remarkable, not by seeking approval, but by embracing her passion and stepping into the spotlight with sincerity and courage. In the days following the talent show, Eleanor found herself invited to small gatherings and community events. People wanted her to share her experience, not just as a performer, but as a symbol of perseverance and courage. She spoke gently about her journey, sharing the importance of embracing opportunities, practicing patience, and believing in oneself regardless of age. Eleanor realized that her story had become a lesson for others, a reminder that talent and passion do not diminish with time, and that it is never too late to pursue what brings joy and fulfillment. Despite the newfound attention, Eleanor remained humble. She continued her daily routines, tending to her garden, reading, and enjoying quiet walks through Willowbrook. Yet the warmth and admiration of her community accompanied her, a gentle reminder of the connection she had fostered through her performance. She appreciated the balance between her personal life and the recognition she had received, finding comfort in knowing that her talent had touched lives while allowing her to remain grounded in her own world. Eleanor's neighbors continued to express admiration, sometimes inviting her to casual gatherings where she would play the piano and sing quietly, not for competition but for the simple joy of sharing music. These moments were intimate, filled with laughter, smiles, and heartfelt appreciation. She discovered that her voice could create bonds, spark conversations, and bring joy in ways that went far beyond the stage of a talent show. Eleanor embraced these small, meaningful interactions with warmth and grace. The teenagers who had initially dared her to perform became close observers and admirers of her talent. They would often ask her questions about her experiences and how she had built the confidence to sing in front of a crowd. Eleanor shared her insights patiently, emphasizing the importance of practice, self-belief, and courage. She encouraged them to explore their own talents, reassuring them that age or circumstances should never be barriers to pursuing one's passions. The interactions were filled with mutual respect, admiration, and a gentle sense of mentorship that Eleanor quietly cherished. Over the following weeks, Eleanor's performance became a source of inspiration for the town. People spoke about it during gatherings, community meetings, and casual conversations on the streets. Her story encouraged others to step out of their comfort zones, to embrace hidden talents, and to share their gifts with the world. Eleanor realized that her journey had sparked something bigger than herself, a collective reminder of courage, hope, and the joy of self-expression. Eleanor reflected often on the day of the talent show. She remembered the nervous anticipation, the first notes of the song, the moment she realized the audience was captivated, and the overwhelming response of the standing ovation. Each memory brought a smile to her face, a feeling of pride and contentment that she carried with her. She understood that her experience had not only been about the applause or recognition, but about reclaiming a part of herself and sharing it with others in a meaningful way. The community's appreciation extended beyond words. Eleanor was invited to participate in workshops and small local events, where her story became a source of encouragement for others who had doubts or fears about expressing themselves. She offered guidance, shared personal insights, and inspired individuals to explore their own potential. Eleanor's presence and wisdom became a quiet but powerful influence in Willowbrook, reminding everyone that courage, persistence, and sincerity could have a lasting impact. Despite the attention and admiration, Eleanor maintained her simple, grounded life. She continued to enjoy the beauty of her garden, the quiet mornings with tea, and the calm of her walks through the town. Yet she carried with her the awareness that her performance had left a mark on her community. People approached her with stories of inspiration, and she listened with gentle interest, feeling a sense of fulfillment that transcended recognition or fame. Eleanor's story became a cherished memory in Willowbrook. The talent show, once considered a light-hearted annual event, was now remembered for the extraordinary performance of the woman who had stepped onto the stage against expectations and delivered something unforgettable. The standing ovation was not just an acknowledgement of talent but a symbol of courage, passion, and the human spirit. Eleanor had shown that age was not a limit, that sincerity could touch hearts, and that every person has the potential to inspire others. As the months passed, Eleanor continued to embrace music, finding joy in both private practice and sharing small performances with friends and neighbors. She nurtured the connections formed through her talent and the warmth of her community. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of self-expression, courage, and embracing opportunities no matter how late they may appear. Eleanor's life was enriched not only by the recognition she received, but by the profound sense of purpose and fulfillment that came from sharing her gift. In the quiet of her home, Eleanor often reflected on the journey from the moment the teenagers dared her to sing to the standing ovation that had filled the town hall. She realized that the story was not just about her voice or her performance, but about embracing life fully, taking chances and touching others in meaningful ways. Eleanor understood that the true reward lay in the connections she had formed, the inspiration she had sparked, and the courage she had reclaimed. Her experience was a testament to the enduring power of passion, heart, and the human spirit.